On the show notes, top of the show list.
Yeah.
G. Bush opens show on moving the goalposts daily in the Deshaun Watson case.
Sounds like he's got some.
What in the hell do you have for us?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
I don't either, but we're all going to find out together.
I'm guessing. I did a couple of YouTube videos. They were pretty cool, I guess. See, that's the great thing about YouTube. You never know when you're going to hit on something, right?
Right.
And it just blows it up. But I will say, man, if we played back, I would have a montage of for about a month ago, right? And you take a look at the montage and you're like, indefinite suspension, 2-year suspension. Oh my God, he's Bauer. Here's the New York Times bombshell, 66. Then you started to hear little things like, well, we're going to settle. So 20 out of 24 were already settled. Then they said, oh, well, hold on now. Really, we're going to only present 12 of them. And then Jay talked about it yesterday. Well, it's only 5 really that they talked about that had any sort of, allegations of touching or whatever the case may be. And then they get rid of one of those now. And then the briefs come out, right? And then the NFL leaks some stuff. They're looking kind of uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, now we're to a point where it's funny. People just stop even leading with it. Like usually it was like, how many games is he getting? Call us up right now. Now it's like, let's talk Baker. Because we don't know if this is really going to be an indefinite thing or a game thing or a 16-game thing. Right now,
are you talking about locally, G? You're obviously listening to a lot more local sports talk than I am.
No. I'm talking nationally.
Oh, nationally.
Yeah. Florio's the Pied Piper.
Well, here's the funny part of this is that Florio is a guy that's got to be a year. It's going to be more than a year. And obviously he's been softening on that. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen is if it ends up in the end, like we all think it's going the opposite direction, right? The wind seems to be blowing the other way. If it ends up being a year or more, guys like Florio and those guys who were on the soapbox for that are going to be like, I told you so. They're going to be right back on that.
When you hedge your bets in every possible way,
of course,
you can find a show where every one of us said it's going to be exactly what it's going to end up being.
You know what we should do after this? Right after this, we should have our Twitter account tweet out, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show guarantees it will be 1 game, and then 2 games, and then 3 games. Right. And then when we find out, we delete all the other ones.
Right.
We retweet that one, and we say,
screen
nailed
grabs,
it.
though. The screen grabs will get us.
Yeah, but maybe people won't think to do that.
So, G. Bush, your thesis here is it's trending downward. Why do you think the goalposts are moving so much?
Well, I think one of the things that happened is people realized there wasn't as much evidence as we thought it was. See, there's a thing that happens in your human mind when you just say sexual assault. That's an open-ended question. There's multiple degrees of sexual assault. It could be rape. It could be a lot of different things. It could be indecent touching. But as the case went on, and as Busby started to leak this information, one of the things that started to happen was he said, I already got my people out of here. I got my 20 settlements. So it's not my job to prove the NFL's case. He was never worried about that. And then the NFL had to present their case. And as people, insiders started to look, they started to go and check people's stories, and you got stories coming out, and it just looks crazy. Like the story about the guy, the kid who his mom was like, hey, I thought Deshaun Watson was a great guy. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, allegations came out.
Right.
Now, that type of stuff is damaging. And I think sometimes we don't want to highlight those things, but I always tell people, if I have to highlight the fact that it just didn't look good after the HBO special, because they had 2 very credible witnesses, or at least one, I thought that we all agreed that looked really credible.
First one especially.
Right?
Yeah.
First one especially. Then you have to present them information about that information coming out that someone's own son, who should be in your corner,
we need
says,
all the
what?
information out there. If the media, we're part of the media.
Right.
If there are powers that be in different media entities that are trying to stop some of the information from coming out, that's inappropriate. We need to hear all what we hope are facts, and because we're hearing certainly plenty of speculation and innuendo and guesses from people out there that sometimes turn into people treating them as facts, which is unfair.
We're hearing leaks.
Yes, a lot.
And
right.
We talked about the leak from the NFL on the NFL side. They told the Associated Press that the league did not. This was from the NFLPA, that the league did not have any evidence that shows that there was force, coercion, violence.
Right.
That was from their perspective.
Sure.
So obviously, a defense attorney might look at a prosecutor's case completely different than a jury might. You know,
Right.
the defense might say, that's all you got? That's weak. But the jury, or in this case, Sue Robinson, might look at that and say, well, that was plenty.
True.
So
Right.
it was from the NFLPA's perspective that the Nugget leak, that they didn't present any. They said that factually. Jason, that can't be presented factually, can it? They presented no evidence that showed force, coercion, violence. I mean, in their view, it didn't show it.
Well,
but,
legally, force and coercion are two completely different things.
They are.
And that was one of the things that I got into it with Tony Busby about.
I remember.
On the radio he said we are going to be very specific. Now, he was talking about court cases and civil cases, not this. Not what we're talking about with Judge Robinson. And so I don't want to speak for him or try and read into, but he was saying, there was a difference in force and coercion, and they were arguing coercion and not force. Never once was Busby and the women arguing force. It was always coercion.
And
That's a big difference.
And I'll give you even in the beginning, the depositions where the Houston Police Department, the person who brought the case forward, she argued to Harden. She argued that if a person is larger in stature physically, Deshaun Watson is about 6'2". If he's larger in stature, that could be intimidating, right? If he has power, that's also intimidating. If he's rich, that means he has influence. So as you take all these things into retrospect, you start to say, okay, well, what is coercion and what is force? And she stepped to, she outreached herself a little bit and said that if you have all four of those things present, somebody is rich, famous, has money, and influence, that a woman cannot technically give consent.
I don't know if that's true or not. It doesn't seem like that would be true.
That's not.
I don't know. Now,
it's
if someone's your
semantics,
boss, that's a different story.
That is correct.
The reason that's not true, guys,
Yeah.
there have been women who have consented to sex.
Of course.
Yeah.
With men who are bigger than them, richer than them, and famous.
Right.
So that's not
It can't be true.
statement.
Right, because wouldn't then any woman that chooses to have sex with Deshaun Watson
Be able to
wouldn't be able
accuse
to
him
have
of rape?
consent?
Well,
Well,
if
they're
that- if
definitely-
that's
yeah.
not
They're
were
definitely
true.
not in an employer-employee kind of situation,
no.
which is in most cases. Like with a masseuse, that's really what it is. You are hiring someone, so automatically, if you're the person paying someone, then you're in the position of power, right?
Absolutely.
But in the end, I think this is important because we're all kind of talking about one side of this to some degree. In the end, Judge Robinson only has to think that one person is extremely credible and he committed a violation of the NFL's policy.
Not even extremely credible, more credible and believable than Deshaun.
Right.
It's literally
and that could be enough for
50.1%.
at least some level of suspension.
Right.
We
Go ahead,
we
Boyd.
all think it's leading one way. It might not be. For all we know, Judge Robinson is going to
Yeah, but I
suspend him for a
think
year.
everybody here is willing to say there is going to be a suspension of some kind. Am
That's
I right?
why.
Yes,
That's why.
most likely.
I'm sorry to say this. I have to argue with just the root of your point because I don't think anything's changed. I mean, I know we've talked a lot, we've learned more things, but at the beginning of this, even when the Bauer thing came down, nobody was saying like, well, he's definitely going to get 2 years now. We were saying that could affect the ruling, but we weren't like, well, that he set the precedent. Now he's not going to play for 2 years. Since the beginning, we've all been saying, so at the very beginning of this, almost everyone here is like, 6 to 8 games probably, 6 to 8 games, 6 to 8 games.
Yeah.
Where are you all at now? I'm still
Same
place.
6 to 8
I don't
games.
think we've
And
changed.
none of us know.
No, you're
so
right.
that even if the narrative did change in any way, we've just been spinning plates because this whole time we are still at 6 to 8
You know,
games
it's
as
like
far
the
as we
win
know.
probability stat. When you watch a game, there's the ESPN will put out the win probability.
Yes.
And if you're up 8 in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, the win probability is 99.9%, right?
Yes.
So I think what we've done throughout this 15, 16 months of this story is we've changed our, not win probability, suspension probability. Just like the ebbs and flows of a game, something happens, you're like, oh, there we go, they're going to win. Oh, no. And I think it's gone like this.
Yeah.
But I do think it's generally stayed within the range of 6 to 8 games with a few peaks of a year or two or none.
I think in
but it's
this
generally
group,
been
I
6 to
agree.
8.
I do think, to G's point, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's making the point that there are some members of the national media that were not really looking at both sides, that were out for blood from the beginning, that were like, this guy's definitely suspended a year plus, and now they seem to be singing a different tune.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Into a more broader perspective, I go to this. if we have a collective bargained agreement, that is a contract. The contract states, say for instance, that all of us are equals here, that if one person does something, this is what it should be, the suspension. If it happens to a point where Bull does something and he doesn't get suspended, then I come to work and I do it, and they say, Garrett, we can't have that. It's in your agreement that you get suspended. We're not So then I go get my lawyer. My lawyer says, okay, well, let me see your policy.
Yeah.
And to break it down, the policy is just like the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
So if I'm someone's lawyer, a high-priced lawyer, I'm going to say, well, I need to see whether or not you are sticking to what your agreement with the players are saying. And if I can prove that not only you didn't agree and not only you didn't follow the ruling, you didn't give them anything. So now that means you are in breach of contract, and I'm going to sue you from putting my player under suspension. Because here's the thing, you have to always say, what's good in this case has to be good in that case, or it's just simple discrimination.
Are you implying the treatment of the owners?
Yes.
Because, Jason, the contract is between the players and the league.
It does not include.
It does not include the owners.
But anyone who falls under the collective bargaining agreement, it says vendors, it says owners, it says players, it says coaches. That is the collectively bargained language. It doesn't say players get this and owners get this. What we've learned is owners don't get it because we're not going to press the issue.
Right.
And so what we're assuming is that just because, well, the league always does that, they get what they want. But that's because the Players Association has never pressed them. And now you're in a court where she's handling this like a court. She's had 25 years. You can't come in front of her and tell you, hey, well, this is always the way it's been. Well, you've been operating wrong, because if you're gonna set a precedent here and go to this level, I just ask you, I put them on defense. And I'm gonna ask you, in your investigation, can you explain to me why Robert Kraft received what was your findings in that? What was your findings in Jerry Jones, why he didn't receive anything? Can you tell us your process on that? We take those processes and compare them. If those processes don't equal up, then I have a very difficult time holding water on your case.
One thing I would say if I were trying to defend that is I would say Robert Kraft was paying a sex worker for sex. I mean, I think right there, the problem is these are differences. So Deshaun Watson went in there and that woman thought she was giving a massage. Whereas Robert Kraft went in there and that woman thought she was giving something very different.
Here's the thing. They're arguing on the premise of it doesn't matter if it's legal or not. It's about the perception and staining the shield. That's why we're here. It's not about whether or not, because neither one of them went to jail. If you're going to tell me you're soliciting, that's prostitution. There was a sex trafficking ring. If I'm sitting here on the other end and you're arguing, well, it was only him paying for sex. That's an illegal
but there is a difference between, in that case, you have two willing parties who both know what's going on. That's what they're going to claim is the difference. So, you have two knowing parties who know what's going on in the Robert Kraft incident, as opposed to one knowing party and somebody who wasn't expecting that going in.
But are they suspending him for that? Or are they suspending him for...
Suspend him for violation of the personal conduct policy, period.
Right.
And that anything.
So the question then
that.
is, so if Deshaun's crime, if you want to label it as that, or his violation was staining the shield, Robert Kraft paying for sex with a sex worker, it's against the law.
It's against the law.
But he ended up not being charged.
Yes.
The video evidence was thrown out. So, Jay, I'm trying to figure out, is this an apples and oranges thing because it's the NFLPA and that collectively bargained agreement is between the league and the players? And as far as I know you said that there is language in the conduct policy
that they're supposed to be held to a higher standard.
But the collectively bargained agreement between the NFLPA and the NFL does not include the owners.
Well, I think G's right. It does include owners, but the personal conduct policy itself, to my knowledge, is players. And maybe I'm incorrect on that, because now we're really drilling down the nitty-gritty that really I haven't looked at yet. But the thing that I guess I would bring up as we're discussing all this, and I think I mentioned this before, we had Rusty Hardin on. Rusty said he believes only 2 of the cases were violations of the personal conduct policy. Now, again, this is Deshaun's own attorney speaking, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Judge Robinson would agree.
Sure.
And I don't even know which 2 he's referring to, and if those 2 are part of the 4 that they're discussing. Like this was.
And we don't
back
know the
before-
overlap.
Right, and this was back before all of these cases settled. But he said only 2 of the, at the time, 22 cases really were where you could argue was a violation of the personal conduct policy to begin with.
We discussed this earlier in the week, and we'll wrap this topic up by doing this. We all gave what we thought was going to happen now, with all the information that we have now. Have you changed? Where are you in terms of what you think Deshaun Watson is going to get from Sue Robinson? And do you think that will be the final word, or do you think it will be appealed?
I think I've been in the same with you. I've been in the 6 to 8 camp all along. And I haven't really moved off of that. I'm still in that. And I've kind of wavered at times on, is he going to overturn this or not? Is Roger going to come back over the top? I'm pretty confident that what was ruled is what will be. Only because this is the system he wanted in place.
Right.
This is what Roger wanted. Roger wanted
He's off the hook.
He's not catching the smoke now.
You don't think he'll appeal, but it's possible that Deshaun, if he thinks if it's 8 and he thinks it should be 4, he could certainly appeal.
And in fact, I said that when the start is, I was kind of thinking 6 to 8, and on appeal it gets knocked down to maybe 4. If it's 6, it's knocked to 4, 8 knocked to 6, or whatever. I guess the bigger concern from Browns fans' perspective is, if she rules, is Roger going to come over the top and
drop a hammer
and strengthen
Which
it?
would be crazy.
And I don't think that will be the case.
I think that would be the outlier.
Really quickly, we haven't explored this. What are the ramifications of 0 games?
I think there are none.
I don't think there's any chance he gets 0.
I don't
Well,
think he is, but in the end, there's people writing about it and complaining about it, but nothing concrete that actually negatively affects the NFL. I don't think.
I think you'd have some upset female, particularly NFL fans, who are at least biding their time and waiting to see how this settles out before they make their decision about whether to keep supporting the team. And I think that 0 would be a real slap in the face to them. And I think that they'd probably have to have a PR nightmare, and then we're already going to catch it when we go to other stadiums. I mean, he's going to be hearing it. If he gets 0 games and it seems like they got away with something, we are the villain. We're the heel of the league at that point.
Yeah,
I feel like.
G. Bush, for you to ask that question, what leads me to ask you: do you think there's a scenario where he gets 0 games?
See, I've already. There's a scenario where he gets suspended indefinitely. So to look at it objectively, you have to put yourself in a situation where you can imagine any of the games, right? So I've been down the road where it's indefinite. I've been down the road where it's 8 games. But I think we rarely talk about the part that is 0 games, because I think 0 games has the most ramifications on the broader picture of what the NFL is doing.
I think in the end, it is a female judge who is not bound by, she can use her own opinion because it's not a court of law. So if she wanted to, if she didn't think there was enough proof, but still was as a woman or as a person, he did something here, I got to suspend him. If she got to the point where she gave him 0, I feel like I don't know how anybody can have a problem with that. For me, as I've said for a couple of days now,
I think Goodell would appeal that.
He can't.
I don't think he can.
Oh no, you're right. 0 games, it's fine.
I'll be surprised
that's
if that
the
happens.
only scenario in which there's no chance for an appeal.
And that's why, to me, 0 is catastrophic because they can't even do nothing about that.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think the NFL loses one dime if it's 0. Not one.
I don't think there's a scenario.
There will be
there.
outrage.
Yeah,
there will be outrage.
I think I agree with you.
Does it cost the NFL a penny?
Well, Bull, that's hard to measure. How do you measure
It
that?
is, but realistically,
Yeah, it
you think
could.
that-
In
I think-
ad sales,
you know what I think?
maybe?
Absolutely. I was going to
know?
say they could lose sponsors.
They
Sponsors?
would
For
absolutely lose sponsors, Bull.
Yeah.
Short term,
absolutely
they'll
lose
gain new
sponsors.
ones. It's a cash cow. People only care about money.
Yeah, but you know how the corporate game works. When the wind is blowing in one direction, corporations jump off, and
Especially
they jump
right
off
now.
fast.
Yep.
And this is.
I will see.
It's
I-
very fascinating.
I can see a
Very.
lot of supportive tweets from Pepsi saying we can't ride with the NFL right now because of this decision or something like that, because they would feel like they have to try
And to your point, there's other sponsors out there that are willing to jump in. Do you want to be the sponsor that says, let's sign up for that?
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know.
So I think
we'll see.
Yeah.